What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. The other day, a listing appeared online for the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake, and it had the internet going back and forth as to if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll take a look at that listing and exactly what it could mean here today. Also, we are going to be talking about the pressure that continues to mount on Sony after their announcement for ending physical games, because now we have different industry, we'll say, people speaking out, with one of them actually working very closely right now with Sony for a game coming up in a few years. But we'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. Oh, and we're also now on Spotify. Now, they do allow us to upload video and audio there, which I started doing. I'll have a link down below if you want to check out the show there. People have been asking me about it, and I decided, you know what? Let's try it and see what happens. So leave a comment, rate it, whatever happens over there on Spotify. But we're going to start today with that detachable disk drive for the PlayStation 5, as we had that revision. You could buy the disk drive separately for $80 or so. And there was something that appeared on the site for it, which we can see. And it is indeed an important notice, just explaining what's going on there from January 2028, that newly released games on PlayStation will be available for purchase on PlayStation Store, etc., etc., etc. But then people noticed, oh, look at this, the first bullet point. Due to high demand, there is a limit of 1 per order. This, of course, then spiraled into the idea that, oh, I guess a lot of people are rushing to buy this thing, and that's why it's now 1 per customer, basically. Well, that notice, that at least that part has actually been there for a while. I even double checked myself just through like the Wayback Machine, and yes. And then others also were noting that that's not necessarily a new thing. Now, the notice that, hey, this isn't necessarily going to make a ton of sense because we're getting rid of physical media to start all of 2028, that is new. But the idea of it being 1 per order, 1 per customer right now, that's been there for a while. Still, though, something tells me these disk drives might be in somewhat high demand as we go along, especially if the PlayStation 6, is indeed just launched without any kind of path forward for physical media owners, because that's, it's gonna be an interesting day if that does indeed happen. Also, we had Square Enix talk about a bit of a surprising idea for a port on the Switch 2, and we can see, now this is over on Games Radar, where they say that they were asked specifically about a Final Fantasy 15 port. Square Enix says, while there are certain hardware constraints when it comes to faithfully replicating the exact experience of Final Fantasy 15, we can say that it is not entirely impossible. Now, Final Fantasy 15, that was on the Luminous engine. So, they moved away from that into like Unreal Engine for obvious reasons. There were just some challenges, we'll say, that they encountered with that older in-house engine. But apparently they could move it over if they wanted. It just would obviously take time and resources. And I guess the question would be, is it worth moving Final Fantasy 15 over to the Switch 2? Maybe. Back in the day, remember they did the Pocket Edition for the Switch, and I guess that was the way that they could make it work. I guess it'd be interesting if it showed up, Final Fantasy 15, with all the additional content just kind of packaged in. Maybe they do something even new, like make some new piece of content for it, and do like a definitive edition or something. It's just Square Enix now looking around for ways to continue going more and more multi-platform. Sure, that's a game that never technically made it to Nintendo's system, so they could do that, make a big thing about it. I'd be more interested to see them attempt to port over Final Fantasy 16, mostly because that would be the newer Final Fantasy. And of course, whenever they decide to talk about Final Fantasy 17, will there be a Switch 2 logo there? Something tells me, yeah, probably. Oh, and we had another PC gaming handheld announced, and it sent shockwaves through the internet, because you can see now this is lined up here nicely by Wario64. We have the different SKUs and models. We have the Ryzen AI Max 385, then the plus 395, but those, of course, have different values in terms of the RAM or storage, with the most expensive one, with 128 gigabytes of RAM, $5,300. Yeah, that's kind of where we are with some of these PC gaming handhelds. Of course, the RAM crunch that's happening. The cheapest entry point would be $3,000. So, yeah, not really getting any cheaper when it comes to these PC gaming handhelds. Now, of course, that one's also very capable, but you do get to the point where you go, is it actually even worth buying in? When, the performance level is good, but it's not like, I don't think it's like $5,000 good when you're playing games that were running on, say, a PS4 or even like PS5, and it's just a decent experience there. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake, reimagining, reborn. There's still a lot of questions around what exactly Nintendo is going to do here with, the classic game, highest rated game of all time, right, on Metacritic. And so people are trying to figure out, are they going to change a ton of it? Are they going to be very one-to-one with it? And one way, of course, you can tell is even by the price point, believe it or not. Like if you look at Star Fox, that's very one-to-one, and it's not a quote-unquote full price $70 or even $80 game. Well, a listing showed up online that got the internet talking quite a bit about Ocarina of Time, and you can see. Now, this is over on PlayAsia, where it is listed at a price of $60 US. Now, of course, this would be looked at as, hold on a minute, it's not 70 or 80, and I know it's funny because, like, that's not expensive enough. But really the idea would be, hey, why isn't it full price? Is it because it's a smaller remake? Is that why? It's more of a remaster? I mean, we saw at least the description, even on the site that then Nintendo took down, that seemed to imply that it was a fairly substantial, we'll say, remake or anything. So the $60 price tag here caught some people off guard. Okay, so there is some context though, all right, when it comes to what PlayAsia has listed here. As you can look at their tab, you can go ahead and arrow down. You'll have US, Europe, or Asia along with Japan. Any of the other ones right now for Ocarina of Time on this listing is just coming soon. So they seem to have what I figure is a placeholder price, but $60 for the Japanese version of the game listed lines up much more so with something like the Fire Emblem game that's coming up here. That's like a couple dollars more in terms of the Japanese release on PlayAsia. And this mostly has to do with the idea that, okay, you're seeing the conversion for yen that's then moved over to your local currency that you have listed on the website. So if you look at Star Fox, it's like in the 40s or so, like 40-something dollars when you convert it over for the similar category, which means this Ocarina of Time multi-language under the Japan option is closer to like that $75 or $80 price point, meaning that, yes, this would actually be full price. And I know, again, it's funny that people are looking at it when it comes to the price point, to the quality, or even the content involved, but also Nintendo kind of plays into that now because they have variable pricing. So not only do we have, is it physical, is it digital, it's also like, what's the overall scale of this game? Is it a 10-hour game? Is it a 20, 30-hour game? Is it a full-on multiplayer game? Is it Mario Kart World, which is $80 for, I don't know, some reason. Although there's a pack in, and I'm sure many people got it that way, myself included, at $50. This is something, though, because of the way that Nintendo presented Ocarina of Time, there are going to be a lot of questions, and people will scrutinize every little thing about this game, and yeah, that does include a listing for it over on PlayAsia. I mean, we're just about a week in July. I think the game is coming out in roughly 4 months, and we've seen very, very little bits and pieces of the game, like, at all. So when it comes down to even, like, are they changing parts of the stories? What do the other characters look like? All we've seen is Link just asleep at this point. So there's still a lot they have to show off. Even Grand Theft Auto, as much as I'm laughing about how we haven't seen gameplay for it, we have seen more about it, and I think that's releasing right around the same time as this Ocarina of Time remake release. Again, sometime in November if I had to take a guess, but there you go. It seems like, at least for now, this listing doesn't mean a lot, mostly because it actually does convert over to be about like that $70 to $80 price point, but also it's a random listing on PlayAsia, and it's probably just a placeholder price they put in their system, considering the other versions of the game listed under that SKU are just coming soon. Next up, let's talk about the mounting pressure on Sony, because it hasn't gotten any better for them over the weekend. In fact, I actually put out a YouTube short when this was going on because I couldn't believe it. Their initial post, the news that they put out, they'd be ending physical media production at the beginning of 2028. The views on that have eclipsed Grand Theft Auto 6's Trailer 1 announcement. And that was a weird thing, if you remember, because the trailer leaked out early. It turned out that was true, and they just went ahead and say, you know what, it's live. And it was a big thing online at the time. But no, this is bigger. This is bigger than GTA 6, apparently, with its first real look and trailer for the game. That's something. So Sony, yeah, still feeling the heat right now when everyone's kind of waiting for Sony to return to the internet, because it has indeed been 4 days now where they've been silent, all right? So with that in mind, people are going around asking all kinds of people in the industry their opinion or their thoughts on what is happening here. And there were two that I wanted to point out, okay? So the first one is Shawn Layden, which he was with Sony up until 2019, and he had some thoughts on this one, which you can see. Now, this was in an interview with Eurogamer where he says, if you look at any decision to discontinue a product or a feature or model or what have you, largely it's a straight spreadsheet decision. What are disc sales compared to digital sales? And I'm old enough to remember when digital sales were like 10%. I'm old enough to remember when digital sales were 0% because we didn't have a digital market, and that number just grew over time. Majority does not mean entirety. So there is a tipping point, where if I have 80% of the opportunity, which represents 95% of the revenue source, what's my incentive to keep the lights on for the other 20% if it's effectively only 5% of the business? See what I'm saying? At some point, it just becomes obvious that we can't keep this whole thing running just for this very small slice of opportunity. That, of course, going off of some of the reporting and stats that Sony has put out there, that it is a very, very small small margin of people even still buying physical games. And I have some questions around that one, because I'm looking at the backlash right now. This doesn't seem like the backlash of 10% of 5% of people, whatever, right, who are buying physical media. This seems like many, many more. And it could also be people who are 100% digital who are like, hold on, this might actually mean that my digital games are going to go up in price, because now you're eliminating market choices and competition outright with gaming for consumers, as they're going to go out and pick the cheapest option most times, whether it's digital or physical. Well, along with this, which, by the way, Shawn Layden also had mentioned that when he was there, like for a while, like decade plus, he was being asked when they were going to remove the disk drive. So I really do think as soon as like the light bulb went off in a lot of investors and executives' heads, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. You can just download these games. This was right around 2010, by the way, 2011, when the PS3 and the 360 started just distributing full-on retail releases, but digitally. You can tell they were like, oh, wow, we don't have to go to retail. When do we get rid of these disk drives, right? So that's been apparently an ongoing thing, and most likely you wait for broadband to become much more widely available globally, and kind of the digital physical situation to take care of itself, at least to a point where you can just give it the last little final shove off the ledge. Now, the other person I wanted to go over here is Hideo Kojima, because he was also asked about this, and like we can see this quote. Now, this was translated by Genki over on Twitter, and this is Kojima speaking at Cinema in Piazza. And he says, since production is ending in 2028, this is about video games, but I grew up with physical media, so I find it really sad. Currently, I've been buying up a lot of Blu-rays, such as various movies and CDs too. The situation is different for games, as they are downloaded to the hard drive. That means the game data remains on your own hardware. However, if things shift to streaming in the future, that wouldn't be the case anymore. With streaming subscription services like Netflix or Amazon, there is a server somewhere, and you essentially just have the right to turn the tap, and when you do, the data flows out. That's how movies work on these platforms, right? You don't download the data. You access it directly through a subscription, and the consequence of that is that you don't actually possess the data yourself. There are companies that own these servers and let you turn the tap for a monthly fee. However, with nations, politics, and various ways of thinking, one naturally has to consider the possibility that if there is a change, the data inside will stop being distributed. And that if that happens, you won't be able to watch or play the movies and games you like. That is what is frightening. So what is happening to video games in 2028 might also happen to movies. I'd like everyone to keep that in mind. And you know what? I've kind of joked about this, but as this is ongoing now, seems more and more likely. See, the idea would be, get you used to having a digital library of games to where you just have an icon on your screen, you press accept and it launches, right? You're not putting a disc in the system or anything. Once everyone's kind of on board with that and we move over to it, it's actually not that much further to go, hey, guess what? You don't have to download the game at all. It'll just launch. And it's called game streaming, all right? It's all cloud-based. Don't worry about it. And that's it. And I think that will be the next big thing that they kind of push everyone over to, is indeed cloud streaming, because guess what the biggest bottleneck is about to become? It's not production of Blu-ray discs. It's going to be the hardware and the cost for it. It's going to be difficult to sell people a $1,000 system at the sort of rate that you were selling even a PS5 starting at $400 in 2020. But even before that, where systems were getting down in price and you'd be able to move like a $100 GameCube or $100, we'll say, PS2 or something. That's not the reality anymore. So I do think the next big step will be, hey, it's just built into your TV because we just stream it to it, and that's it. That is something I would be somewhat at least mindful of. I think we're still like a decade plus all from that happening, but I also thought we still had another generation in us for physical media with PlayStation, and here we are. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the Steam machine, because it looks like someone has already discovered its own red ring of death. So this is over on Reddit, we can see, and this is a person who posted, it looks like their Steam machine kind of sitting here with the light bar on the front that's like blue to white. It's kind of just an RGB light, I guess. And on the front here, it's red. Also, a little orange light looks like that the camera picked up right next to the power button is on. And they just said, well, the Steam machine was pretty cool for the 20 minutes that it worked. Now, it seems like they sort of recounted their situation where the system, when you turn it on, after even a few minutes, it'll just have this red bar, and that's kind of it. Digital Foundry noticed this and also then went through some of the Steam support website, finding a bunch of different fault codes that are described here, which includes the full red bar, the system or the device is overheating, a blinking red bar in the fourth quadrant, no RAM detected, a blinking red bar in the second quadrant, no SSD detected, and a blinking red bar in the first half, memory training failed, and a blinking red bar on the right half, GPU failure, which seems to be what they're describing here. So when I looked, if you look at the board for the system, it is like a BGA. It's like an all-in-one board. So the chips are basically soldered directly to it. And when you go through that kind of like sort of mass production manufacturing, you will have some systems that just slip through the cracks. I know people are annoyed at the Steam machine because of its price point. Its performance to the amount of money you're putting out doesn't really make a lot of sense. It doesn't line up. It is purely convenience at this point. Just being able to just drop into your living room and it works. So when I see this, I go, okay, a lot of these systems that are shipped thousands, tens of thousands even, you're going to have some that end up getting customers and they're just broken. And that's kind of the way it is. There are faulty systems. So from here, it would really come down to how does Valve respond? I assume just based on what they've done in the past, they'll probably get a hold of them. They'll ship out a new one. It'll be pretty seamless and easy, as I've heard the many stories with the Steam Deck where there were problems there too. And Valve was indeed quick to respond and just get them a whole new Steam Deck. And then I guess taking the old one, refurbish it, and then send that one out to another person. So I am kind of curious if this is something that we see pop up more and more. At least for now, it just seems to be one specific case, but certainly something to at least keep an eye on here to see if this is something that's reoccurring as more and more people now are starting to get their Steam machines in. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if you have a PS5, does it have a disk drive attached to it right now? Oh, wow, okay, 87% say yes, 13% say no. I see some people in the comments like, hey, I still have the original PS5. It's still rolling along, which, I will give credit to the Xbox Series and the PS5. Pretty good systems in terms of just overall functionality. We've had so many systems in the past generations where the hardware just crumbles and it just degrades very, very easily. These systems, I think, held up pretty well overall, but people in the comments are like, yeah, I still watch Blu-rays and DVDs on this thing. Like, it has a function outside of just gaming. It's a pretty good media device there. And then others just like, hey, I like to have the option, believe it or not, of if I want to buy a game used or borrow it from a friend or whatever, it just gives me more options in the market to take advantage of any kind of deals that happen. And I see this now online quite a bit. It's like, you have to be all digital or all physical. It's like, no, guys, the point of this is that you can say, oh, okay, that game, the disc-based version of the game, is very cheap on Amazon Prime Day. Or you go into a GameStop or used store, it's very cheap here in the used bin, I'm going to buy that one, versus the full price digital. Or hey, the digital one is 85% off for whatever reason, and it's a collection, so I'll buy that. That's the idea. You play the market against itself, but when you literally cut the market in half and eliminate that, and you have nothing to play against, say, digital games, it's going to be kind of tough for you to find as many deals, if any, going forward. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Jason, who says, people are ending their PlayStation Plus over the physical media. I say cancel your GTA 6 pre-order to tell them you want physical media. I don't know if the canceling of GTA 6 would necessarily send a message to Sony. PlayStation Plus, sure, that, yeah, I mean, you're just less money to them then. I think there are a couple things. Some people are also mentioning, hey, when Wolverine comes out, let's just get physical copies of it, and we'll have the ratio be like 80% physical, 20% digital. I mean, I guess you could do that, but I think the way that Sony would really feel what's happening right now is whenever the PlayStation 6 comes out. And because that's when people, so we're all aware of this, and I will say there are a lot of views on that message. So I think more people than even expected are aware of it. But when people in the mainstream start seeing the PlayStation 6 and start asking questions about the PlayStation 6, and they're like, oh, it doesn't play my PS5 like the disc, it doesn't work. And that was something that happened going from the PS3 to the PS4 that I remember actually quite vividly, how many people came in and were unaware that the PS4 would not play their PS3 games, and you have to kind of explain it to them. So this is something that will take some time to get out there if Sony does, again, continue forward with it, and it'll be something where the PlayStation 6 maybe just gets passed over for the first year, 2 years, 3 years even, and Sony's sitting there like, oh, okay, we might have a problem if we can't get people to move from the PS5 to the PS6, but then what do? Because I guess they would have shut down their factories for manufacturing Blu-rays. It's, Sony has not put themselves in a good position here, especially since they still have to talk about, the $1,000 system at some point. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talk about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to hear more discussion around Sony moving away from physical media in 2028 and just the overall reaction online. We did about an hour-long Spawncast over the weekend, and I'll also leave that down below. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.